Hi, my name is Dr. Uri Burstyn. I'm a veterinarian in Vancouver, BC, and I'd like to welcome you to my series of practical skills for pet owners. What are you doing, Pirate? Why are you so adorable? You about to strike at me? No. Hi, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Why Can't I Touch That Cat? Well, that cat's touching me right now, but it's very, very topical to our video. So before I get into this, please remember to squish, like, and subscribe, and tap that little bell icon next to subscribe so you actually get notifications of upcoming videos and live streams that I put out. So with that said, you might want to go check out part 1 of this video if you haven't seen it already, because I made it in response to people's question as to why can't I touch that cat. A lot of people ask this in the comment section of my videos, wondering why certain cats just won't sit on your lap, why you can't pet them, why they might be aggressive out of nowhere when you really just want to have some cat love. And in the part 1 of the video, me and Mr. Pirate here talked a little bit to you guys about behavioral factors that may contribute to this, as well as bringing up the topic of chronic pain. And specifically, we talked a little bit about oral pain, like teeth issues that may cause your cat to be in pain. And the key message there was that cats who are in chronic pain are often aggressive, often unapproachable, and it's really, really hard for most people to really assess chronic pain in a cat. They don't show obvious signs of discomfort. They are very cryptic in the way they show discomfort, and a lot of people interpret it as aggression. A good example of this is a story a friend of mine told me once about his cat who has back pain, jumping up on the counter and then hissing and aggressively lunging towards his girlfriend who was sitting right next to there. And she thought that the cat was out to get her, whereas in effect, the cat actually just had back pain, and jumping up hurt him, and he reacted the way a cat does to pain, which is the way any little vicious predator does, just rawr. So that's a great example of how a cat's pain can be misinterpreted as aggression or not being nice, because it's actually a really, really sweet, cuddly, loving cat. So in part 2, we're going to talk a little bit about some other sources of chronic pain that are commonly seen in clinics, but many people may not immediately think of when they look at their cat. And most of these issues come up a little bit later in life, but not all of them. Some of them can happen to very young cats as well. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about a really kind of common, often young cat issue, more common in long-haired cats, that can really make them uncomfortable and make them snappy, and that is hair mats. Something as simple as hair matting can really ruin a cat's day and their temperament. So Sesame here is a semi-feral cat. So unlike the other cats that I usually use on my channel, she's not really safe to touch or work with. She was kind of a bit neglected with elderly owner, some chronic issues. I'm going to use Sesame as an illustration of why certain cats are just not that cuddly. You can hear her warbling a little bit. She's letting us know to be careful, and she does have a bit of a timer on her. So the cool thing about Sesame, though, is that when she first came to me, I could not touch her at all. She was attacking me and my staff. She was absolutely a vicious, untouchable cat. Right now, she's still a little bit wary of us, but at least I can pat her. Oh, be a little bit careful, I know, darling. And I have my towel here so I can squish her if she gets a little bit more active. But Sesame had really bad mats all along her back and her bum. She could not be touched. This cat was in chronic pain, and she was lashing out at everything around her. What we did was we sedated her and we shaved her. That's all we did. You know, we're a full-service veterinary hospital, but this way we helped this cat is we shaved the mats off her bottom. She was in a lot of pain, and once we shaved the mats off her bottom, she came out of sedation a whole new cat. At home, she can be cuddled. She sits on her owner's lap. She can be picked up. None of this was possible before we addressed the source of her chronic pain. And you can see now it's starting to grow in a little bit. There's still little bald patches down there, but this is, she's still a little bit edgy, but this is nothing compared to the sort of very aggressive, untouchable, scary cat we had to deal with before we removed her source of chronic pain. And this is an excellent example. I'm showing her to you guys just to illustrate the fact that, look, I'm petting a cat that could not be touched 2 weeks ago. So Chronic pain is one of the most common reasons why cats, particularly house cats who are used to being around humans, are dangerous or aggressive or snappy or however you want to put it. So please consider this. And again, this is why I always say that when a cat is touchy, we look for the chronic pain. So the next cause of pain I'd like to talk about is osteoarthritis. And I mentioned this a little bit in the first video, but the common sites where cats get OA, osteoarthritis, is the neck and elbows. And if you look at the video I made about geriatric cat care, I think it's part 2 or 3, I talk a little bit about strategies to manage that kind of chronic arthritis pain, to make your older cat more comfortable and make their life a little bit happier. But today I just want to focus on the fact that arthritis pain happens and it's very rarely obvious. Particularly neck pain can be really severe, really hard to control. And these are the cats that will react when you touch them, when you pick them up, or the ones where, I know everybody's had this experience where you pet a cat and it's good, and then cat attack. And there's many reasons why that can happen. But one of them is that if they are a little bit uncomfortable, if they have a sore neck or a sore back, you may have just touched a trigger point there, or maybe it was just a little bit uncomfortable and eventually they get fed up with you petting them. So elbow and neck arthritis is very hard for owners to pick out at home. It's pretty easy to pick out for a veterinarian on a proper neurologic examination. But there is one observation that owners make at home. That one observation is some cats, if you think about a cat jumping off your table or off a couch onto the floor, try to imagine this with me. Cat jumps off, and of course they walk away gracefully, nonchalantly, right? This is a normal cat. A cat with elbow pain or neck pain, they will jump off and they'll stick their landing. They'll often startle there for a second and kind of stand there a moment and then walk off. This might be a subtle difference, but most owners can't pick this up at home. And people often notice their cats will be kind of a little more tenuous about jumping off of things, and then they'll stick that landing and freeze there for a second before walking off instead of just walking away nonchalantly. And this, particularly if you have an older cat or an obese cat, you could look at that as a sign of elbow or neck pain. I'm sorry, Pirate, is my hand waving and disturbing you? Ooh, I know it's not very nice. I'll try to pet you instead. Another common spot for cats to get osteoarthritis is in their lower back. And that can be a little bit more subtle, but an observation that owners often make at home is, and I'm sure everybody who's had a kitten in recent memory can relate to this, you know, cats get into places you don't want them to go to, up on counters, into the laundry cupboard, you know, up on high shelves. So, and as they age, they'll often stop jumping up to places. So, and there would be a number of reasons for this, but if your cat is not very obese and yet suddenly stops jumping into its favorite hidey hole that's up off the ground, it could be that it has some lower back pain. And cats get something called spondylosis deformans, which is basically a fusion of the vertebral segments along the back. Often it's asymptomatic. Often you can see this on x-rays. The back looks really fused, but the cat looks normal and comfortable. But in some rare cases, the spondylosis process can pinch a nerve, and in those cases, cats will be quite uncomfortable. And often they'll be uncomfortable for a year or two, and then when the back is done fusing, they'll actually get more comfortable again. So it's not uncommon to have these cats on painkillers for like chronic pain control for years, and then eventually they stop needing it, and everyone's kind of happy. So that is not at all unusual. But it's a fairly subtle change, and it can cause other issues like problems defecating or urinating. In dogs, we often see back pain expressed as dogs who no longer posture normally to pee. So male dogs who will no longer raise their leg to pee, or female dogs who sort of walk or sort of no longer crouch as far as they normally would to go to the bathroom. And this can be indicative of either hip, lower back, or knee pain in dogs, but it's a pretty common complaint. And if you see your dog doing that, it's probably worthwhile getting them checked out by a vet, because they may be uncomfortable and we can make it better. So why not, right? So another common cause of discomfort in cats is ingrown toenails. And this was one that's actually really, really common. When I worked in Emerge, we'd quite often get these phone calls about people saying, my cat's really limping. And of course, the cat's been limping for about 3 weeks, and the call comes, 11 p.m. on a Friday or a Sunday night, just the way it always is. One phone call I got when I was a student working as a technician or a nurse at an emergency hospital. It's really funny. And it happened over and over again. People say, there's something stuck to my cat's foot. I think it's a button. The first time I heard it, I was really like, how can a button be stuck to a cat's foot? But when they bring this cat in, what we always find is an ingrown dew claw. Let me demonstrate where the dew claw is on a cat. So the dew claws are these little claws here. And because they're kind of high up on the leg, here's one here as well, they're often the first claw that a cat stops grooming on their own. And there's a number of reasons why cats can stop doing that. But these claws will often grow all the way around and into the paw pad, which is this little delicate little thing right here, this little leathery pad. You notice they have little paw pads here as well. These wonderful little buttons that cats have on their paws. So the dew claw is a very common claw to grow all the way around and into the paw pad. It can happen to any of the other claws as well. And it is very, very painful. See this little, hello kitty, do a little hello kitty paws for paws. These little paw pads. So you imagine the nail grows and curls into that paw pad, and it can grow right in there, causing a very painful wound. And often owners just don't notice this because, you know, cat paws are fluffy and close to the floor. And it's really easy fix. You know, we trim that nail. You know, often at this point, often cats require antibiotics or a bandage because it's often infected. But it's a really easy fix. And once you fix it, the cat goes back to normal. And there can be a number of reasons why they get these ingrown nails. You know, as cats age and develop things like osteoarthritis and other health issues, they will scratch less. And one of the reasons the cats scratch is to shed their nails. A cat's nail is basically like a little cone, and cats will shed, and I'm sure most cat owners have seen this, cats will shed the entire sheath of the nail, and there'll be a fresh, sharper nail underneath. But if they're no longer scratching, then the sheath's going to get built up, and you get this massive giant claw that eventually will curl around into your paw pad. So this is something I actually think is really worth doing, is if you have an older cat, you know, have a look at their nails once in a while. If you're not trimming a cat's nails regularly, then it's worth checking that out, because, you know, once they get really big and curly, you know, this can happen. It's totally preventable, and it's really quite sad because it hurts the cat so much, and we never want to see cats in pain, right? So ingrown nails, osteoarthritis, hair mats, all of this is super, super common. Now, and these are all kind of physical ailments. Another thing, and there's two more things I'd like to talk about that are maybe a little bit more subtle, but can also lead to a cat that should otherwise be a sweetheart being a little bit cranky and not so much fun to play with. Hyperthyroidism is one of the big three age-related diseases that happen to cats. It is an endocrine disorder, meaning it's a disorder that has to do with hormones, and in this case, the thyroid hormone specifically. Cats tend to get elevated thyroid hormones when they develop hyperthyroidism. It's thyroid hormone is produced by a gland in the neck, and cats often get a little benign tumor in this thyroid gland, which is not life-threatening, but it does elevate, it just pumps out thyroid hormone. And the thyroid hormone is kind of, think of it as the thermostat of the body. When the levels go up, sort of the heat, the energy, everything goes up. And these cats tend to get skinny, they're hungry, their body temperature is high, they can get hyper-aggressive and hyperactive, and it's like the classical skinny, freaky old cat that just everybody's kind of terrified of approaching. And yeah, and it also causes heart damage. These cats often have heart murmurs and other problems. It's not a great thing to have, luckily very controllable. And like I said, it is one of the three most common old cat diseases that we see. And so behavioral changes from that are reasonably common. And again, this is a hormonal disorder that's diagnosed with blood work. It's part of the reason why we recommend blood work every year for all cats over the age of 8 or 9. And that's not my personal recommendation. It's recommended by the American Association of Feline Practitioners. And it's one of the things we really pick up on that age, sort of old age blood work. It's very treatable. And when you get the thyroid hormone under control, then the cat's behavior goes down to normal, and their heart works better, and they put on weight, and are generally looking like they just shed 10 years of age. So it's really wonderful. It's kind of a cool diagnosis to get as a veterinarian, because we know we can really help in these cases, and the cat kind of goes back to normal and feels wonderful. So thank you for sticking with me. I think Mr. Pirate's falling asleep here, but I do have one more thing to talk to you about before we finish this video. And this, again, one of the more subtle sources of discomfort that may not be immediately obvious, but bladder and kidney stones. These happen, mineralizations in the urinary tract are a very, very common health issue in cats of all ages. And certainly those of you who know a human who passed the kidney stones will know that this is one of the most painful things that can happen to you in your lifetime. And in cats and dogs, it's exactly the same. Really, really hurts. Now, they can also have bladder stones, which are actually often asymptomatic. Now, in humans, you might get some subtle complaints like burning when you urinate or mild abdominal discomfort. In cats and dogs, this is typically something owners just don't pick up on. They just don't express discomfort when it's really, really mild. But they can have a bladder full of stones without you really knowing it. Sometimes we just discover this on x-rays by accident. Other times we discover it because part of our old cat workup is blood work and urinalysis, and we often see crystals in the urine, and then we chase those up and find that there's actually bladder stones there or kidney stones. So this is the kind of diagnosis you can't really establish without veterinary support and somebody who can do urinalysis and take x-rays, but it can account for crankiness and aggressive behavior because it's very painful. And again, this is something very, very controllable in like 99% of cases. And it's a really good thing for you as a pet owner to be aware of. And I think it also helps to understand why we do age-related health screens on pets, mostly cats. But I mean, we're getting more and more towards doing health screening on dogs as well, because a lot of these old age diseases, you can find a blood work or urinalysis long before the pet looks sick or long before the signs of disease become really obvious. And then you can help them before the suffering gets too bad, which is really the goal of the veterinary profession. And I think the goal of most pet owners is to have a comfortable, happy pet, not to have a sick pet that then you try to fix, right? So I think those are the common sources of chronic pain that can contribute to a cranky cat. So I hope that this will give you guys a little bit more appreciation for feline behavior. Maybe give you guys a little bit more compassion for those cats that aren't so sweet, and encourage you to look into reasons why they may be not as approachable as you'd like them to be. If you have some stories that you'd like to share about your own pets who had chronic pain and how treating it helped them, I really encourage you to do so in the comment section below. I'll be looking through it and commenting, responding to them. I think it's really wonderful to share your experiences with other pet owners so that everybody who comes to my channel and comes to this video can benefit from your experience, and that we can all learn and grow together and get better at taking care of our pets. Well, I hope you found that to be educational and helpful. If you'd like to see more videos like this, I would really appreciate your support, which you can express by joining me on Patreon, where I have a wonderful community of patrons already, or by getting some Squish That Cat merchandise like this t-shirt. I also have mugs and a bunch of other stuff, so please support me. I look forward to making more videos like this, and until next time, have fun with your pets, and I'll see you again.